Socialist. Loaded up with hollow tips, cause politics will turn your city into the Gaza Strip. Military industry justify sales like a drug dealer lyrically. Fucked up physically, but having two sides doesn't imply symmetry. Cause Philly the Philistine, our children of fricassee. Time's up, like the Celestine prophecy. My people is filled now, no more chances to copy me. The ghetto philosophies and get yourself killed. If I don't sell them the product, somebody else will. America, like it or not, I represent you. Teach me, show me the weapons to use against you. My spray hands is the sack cities for New York, bitch. Now I'm Alaric, Gayseric, 476. Smart motherfuckers from the hood learn history. Stupid niggas never learn shit. Die religiously. Rebels locked and loaded. The only law once the government is corroded. Second Amendment. My life might be intense, but the rights do not be infringed. Second Amendment. It's a propaganda for weapon companies or necessity in the country. Second Amendment. No escape with talents, not for violence, protects and balance. Second Amendment. Walk around town with the pound strapped down on my side. No frontin' just in case I gotta smoke something. Sad gloves just in case I gotta show something. Walk out just in case I gotta post something. 30-30 just in case I gotta go hunting. Open case in the city, I don't know nothing. Random acts, you wanna play my circle? My first age commercial, death equals violence. Anarchist, violent, reactionary, violent. Curse music, out of a red violin. Only Republicans I fuck with. Living on an island, Oregon cheese like in the...
Hey guys, you know what time it is. Wait, did you not know that? Awkward. Yeah, it's Gun Violence Awareness Week. I thought that was pretty funny. I don't know about you guys, but I love the fact that that's how that fell. Oh man. Well, anyway, it's another Anarchist Weapons Wednesday, and I've got another great show for you. This time around, we got the United Soviet Socialist Republic of Commiefornia's ammo ban going into effect soon. SCOTUS rejects the anti-NFA case, while Trump talks a ban on yet another accessory. Banning guns ain't working out so hot for the UK. And of course, we have our Florida man of the week, as always. So let's go ahead and do this. Oop. Wow, that didn't work out, huh? Ah! It's the first time I screwed that up. Let's try it again. Alright, so first we head to La La Land. The shit and needle covered leftist paradise that is the United Soviet Socialist Republic of Commiefornia. Like that? I like that. Yeah. Via the LA Times, gun owners stockpile ammo before new background check law begins. I know, whoever could have guessed, right? That people were going to stockpile a bunch of ammunition right before they try and make it really hard to get it. California ammo buyers are making a run on gun shops ahead of a new state law, which on July 1st will require buyers of bullets. I'm quoting this article, by the way, so I just want to point out, bullet, cartridge, bullet, cartridge, bullet, cartridge. Do you see? Are you seeing right now? Do you see the difference here? So bullet, and then cartridge is the whole thing. The whole thing. Okay. Keep up with me here. All right, so they have to show identification and undergo a background check to screen out felons and people with illegal arms. As if somehow denying them all bullets is going to magically take the guns away from them. In a state with the toughest gun laws in the nation, and yet still miraculously one of the highest gun violence rates, Governor Gavin Newsom and some of the other leaders there see restricting ammunition sales as a necessary next step in reducing gun tragedies, as if somehow taking bullets away from law-abiding citizens is going to go ahead and stop that. Now, Newsom included restrictions on bullets. Again, bullet, cartridge, bullet, cartridge. You see this? Don't get this confused. This isn't hard. This isn't rocket surgery. I mean, seriously, these idiots have no idea what they're talking about. But in Proposition 63, his statewide initiative that was approved by voters in 2016, and that helped raise his profile for that run for governor that he just did. From San Bernardino to Ventura to Poway, too many Californians have already died from gun violence, despite your tyrannical laws. So let's just law harder, apparently. Newsom said last week, I champion Proposition 63 because it is beyond time that we take common sense actions, such as these, to keep deadly ammo out of the wrong hands and protect our communities. As if somehow he's doing any of that, but okay. The new law closes a loophole in existing rules. Apparently having ammunition is a loophole in gun ownership laws. Aimed at reducing illegal weapons, supporters say, while some gun owners say it goes too far in infringing the rights of law-abiding citizens. Gee, you think? Kim Rhode, an Olympic gold medalist, that is her right there, with her gold medal, bronze medal, silver, I think multiple golds actually she won. She's very, very good. I won't say she can outshoot me, but she might possibly be able to outshoot me. Anyway, she's an Olympic gold medalist shooter from El Monte. She said she uses thousands of rounds each week to keep up her skill with daily practice. The law approved in 2016 not only creates more red tape for purchasers, but also requires them to buy ammo face-to-face from a licensed dealer, which is going to completely prevent online orders to California. Quote, these regulations essentially prevent me from being able to stay qualified and not only hurt my skill, but jeopardize the United States representation at the Olympic Games, she said. You know, about time that she moved maybe away from the People's Republic of Commiefornia, you know. Just saying. Rhode is a plaintiff in a lawsuit backed by the National Rifle Association, of all people, that is pressing the courts to block the requirements on grounds it is unconstitutional. Gosh. Although the next court hearing is going to be months away. Meanwhile, the State Department of Justice is scrambling to develop its procedures for the screening process, with the possibility that the new system will not even be finalized by the start of the month. So again, this is going into effect July 1st, and they don't even have a process yet for these background checks, which is either going to mean that it's going to do nothing, or it's going to mean that they shut down all ammo sales, period, and no one can buy rounds, which just might think maybe cause the run on ammunition. Even with a possible delay, gun owners have been stockpiling ammunition. OC Gun Stores owner Scott Bodkin said sales of ammunition have doubled at his Lake Forest store in recent weeks. Quote, people are gearing up for it, he said of the new law. They are buying a lot. They don't like it. It's just another typical California deterrent to make things tougher for gun owners. Amen, sir. The Sacramento area firm Ammo Depot has leased a freeway billboard warning of the Luna? Wow. Okay, then. New law and urging customers, quote, get your ammo now. And yes, you should. If you haven't already, get buying. Mike Hine of Aid's Gun Shop in Orange said ammunition sales in recent months have jumped by more than 10%, including an increase of customers making bulk buys of as many as 1,000 rounds, as if that's this magical number. Are you kidding me? That's a typical buy where I'm from, people. 1,000 rounds, that's like a weekend. That's all it's going to take to run through that is a weekend at the range. It's nothing more. Quote, people are starting to stock up. We stocked up on ammunition, he said. As most people know about the deadline, they're running scared and they are pissed off. Well, not pissed off enough, because I'm pretty sure that all of those politicians are still in office. Just saying. Today's show, by the way, is brought to you by the Damnation from Manowar, as well as my t-shirt sponsor, who I'll get to in a moment. He said there's also confusion about what the new law will require, and added that the Justice Department has not provided any clarity at all. An agency representative refused to comment on the new law and say when it will actually be enforced. The ammo law was one of a half dozen bills approved in 2016 amid this big public outrage bullshit over a raft of mass shootings, blah, blah, blah. Newsom's initiative called for ammo buyers to undergo background checks and get a 4-year ammo buying permit from the California Department of Justice. 4-year permit. You have to pay every 4 years for the privilege of buying ammunition for the weapons you already own. The legislature approved a bill that preempted parts of Newsom's initiative to create a less complicated screening process that would provide immediate clearance for each purchase for those ammo buying, which did away with the 4-year permit. To give the state time to set up a system for instant background checks, the law's effective date was delayed until July 1st of this year. The law taking effect next month requires those buying ammunition to show a driver's license or other photo identification, and for the licensed seller to collect the buyer's name, date of birth, and current address. But don't worry, kids, no one's coming for your guns. The seller then will make an instant check by computer to make sure the buyer is not listed on Department of Justice database called the Prohibited Armed Persons File, which includes people who have been disqualified from possessing firearms because of criminal convictions or severe mental illness. So basically, the people that the government has just decided they don't actually get to own guns. Because that is completely what the Founding Fathers meant when they said shall not be infringed, right? Buyers, by the way, will be charged a fee of $1 for the background check, and state officials expect at least 13 million checks the first year. Because that's cheap, fiscally responsible. You know how that works. State officials say California's database includes 4.5 million people who possess firearms. That's right, database. California's database. But fewer than 2/3 of those people are active firearms users. Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, and New Jersey have enacted similar laws. You should probably pick up on most of those states and some things about them. But those states require buyers to first pass a background check and obtain a license in order to purchase ammunition. According to Hannah Shearer, litigation director of the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, one of the many mad cows. New York is developing a system like California, said Shearer, whose gun control group was formed by former Rep. Gabby Giffords, who was severely wounded in an assassination attempt that everyone wants to call a mass shooting in 2011. Before Proposition 63, it is easier to buy ammunition than cold medicine and cigarettes, Shearer said. Well, that doesn't mean that you should make it harder to buy ammunition. That means that you should make it easier to buy cold medicine and cigarettes. Because, I mean, realistically, they're... The ones that are actually more dangerous are the cigarettes, let's be honest, but either way. Unsurprisingly, mass shooters have assembled arsenals by ordering ammunition online, because that's totally untrackable. And each year, California law enforcement officers have uncovered hundreds of thousands of rounds of illegal ammunition while investigating the illegal possession of firearms. That's right, an amalgamation of lead, brass, a little bit of smokeless powder, and some primer compound is, when assembled, illegal. Apparently. But, you know, when you make a gun illegal, you're making an amalgamation of metal and plastic and possibly wood illegal. So, you know, there's that too, I guess. Similar background checks implemented in Sacramento for more than a decade have allowed police detectives to track down and seize illegal guns from those trying to buy ammunition. According to Amanda Wilcox, the policy chair of Brady, California, a gun control group that should sound awful familiar, and supports the new state law, because that's a surprise. That's a big investigative tool, said Wilcox, who suffered the death of a daughter due to gun violence. If I recall correctly, I think that was actually a domestic violence thing, and the guy passed a background check, and the weapon wasn't illegal at all. Now, I could be wrong about that, but if memory serves, that is in fact the case, which means that no background check, gun law, none of that would have actually prevented it at all. So, you know. That's a big investigative tool, said Wilcox, who suffered the death. It's really a way to get a handle on the problem of illegal guns. Yep. Los Angeles has also had success with background checks of ammunition buyers, according to Los Angeles. People prohibited from buying guns, felons, domestic abusers, and people with serious mental illness shouldn't be able to purchase ammunition either, said Los Angeles City Attorney Mike Fuhr, who was on the city council when he proposed background checks in the 1990s and supports the new state law, because of course he does. He's a Democrat. Wilcox said the law is needed to plug a big loophole. As if that exists. I mean, again, if you can't own a gun then legally, then there isn't a loophole here. It's still already illegal. Making it just even more illegal to also be able to use that gun doesn't actually change anything or do anything appreciable. You're just like, oh, we're going to ban this harder. Although it is against existing law to sell ammunition to people prohibited from owning firearms, there's no way to enforce it. People could sell ammo out of the trunk of the car. Man, you know, I really wish more people would do that, because I can't get it in large enough volume for what I need. Aaron Dunst of A1 Shooting Sports in El Monte said people are increasingly interested in his classes on how to make their own ammunition, which would completely avoid the background check law. Because, again, bullet, cartridge. The bullet is not illegal. None of those components, when not assembled into one thing, are regulated at all. So if you make your own, you are getting around this anyway. So all this is ever going to do, at most, is mean that you now have a surge in the reloading industry in California, and they are then going to start regulating individual bullets and reloading machines and brass and everything. It's a never-ending cycle, which we'll get to momentarily. Aaron Dunst of A1 Shooting Sports in El Monte said people are increasingly interested in those classes. He said, the law isn't going to solve the problem of gun crime. Quote, it's going to generate a black market for ammunition overnight. Gosh, who could have guessed that one? A lawsuit was filed in April 2018 by Rode and the California Rifle and Pistol Association, the state affiliate of the NRA, which supports the litigation. The lawsuit, which is scheduled next for a hearing November 15th, argues that the ammunition law violates the Second Amendment right to buy ammunition for self-defense and, quote, will ban millions of constitutionally protected ammunition transfers and heavily burden countless millions more. Well, that goes under no duh, but okay. The NRA said in a statement that the lawsuit is just part of a bigger fight against California's efforts to limit gun owners' liberties. California's history of stepping on the rights of its citizens is egregious, and helping with this lawsuit is one of many steps the NRA is taking to stand and fight for law-abiding gun owners, said Chris W. Cox, executive director of the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action, and great big fat liar, because that is not what the NRA does. How the law is implemented in the coming weeks could determine the next steps in the litigation, said Sean Brady, an attorney for the California Rifle and Pistol Association with an unfortunate last name. Shearer predicted the legal challenge will fail, because of course he did. Whiny little bitch. The Second Amendment... The Second Amendment doesn't protect a right to undergo a background check, to not undergo a background check, she said. Under every reasonable interpretation of the Constitution, the Second Amendment allows states to enforce criminal laws by ensuring that everyone buying guns and ammunition has a clean record. She said that. She legitimately said that. That the purpose of this law does not interfere with the Second Amendment. Well, apparently, someone needs to explain to Ms. Shearer that what shall not be infringed actually means, because she seems to be a little unclear on this. I mean, that being said, I do have to say that the irony of the FUDs at the NRA arguing against this is palpable. Aren't they making the exact same arguments against the ammo ban that they made for the bump stock ban? Isn't that exactly the same argument, that it's an accessory? But they're saying, so on the one hand, they're saying that this is this is essential, right? The ammunition is essential for the functioning of the gun, even though it's not part of the gun and would never be technically part of the gun. It goes into it and it makes it run. So they're saying that, well, this we want to protect, but suppressors and bump stocks, those who needs those anyway? Those don't actually contribute. I mean, infringing on those isn't actually infringement, strictly speaking. I mean, this is the exact same argument. And in case you've missed it and you've been living under a rock, Trump said that he's going to, quote, seriously look at suppressor bans now. So he already banned bump stocks by fiat. He just wrote on a piece of paper, no more for you. I'm so pro-Second Amendment. I'm the most pro-Second Amendment president that I am currently aware of. I mean, and then now, after the NRA, the Negotiating Your Rights Away organization, selling out since 1871. Now, all of a sudden, the exact same arguments that they used to justify why the bump stock ban was okay. Oh, it's not actually the gun, and it's not actually essential to you owning the gun, so it doesn't actually matter. Now, all of a sudden, these exact same things, they're applying to something that you can totally own a gun without also owning, that you can make yourself, and now suddenly they're going to object to it. They're trying to play both sides of the fence here, and it's freaking absurd. Like, they're the least intellectually honest and consistent organization I have ever had. And the bottom line is, free men do not ask permission to keep and bear arms. And in the United States, that right is named and guaranteed by the Second Amendment. If the ammunition can be infringed on, and accessories can be infringed on, and the type of action, because now they're threatening semi-auto bans, the type of action can also be infringed on, then guess what? The right of the people to keep and bear arms is getting fucking infringed on. There's a reason no types of weapons are included in the language of the Second Amendment. If you're confused about its meaning, I have a book suggestion for you. It's called For the Defense of Themselves and the State. It's by Clayton Kramer. It's a little expensive, but if you can get your hands on a copy, read through that, and you will see that at every point it was understood that the right to keep and bear arms applied to all arms, all ammunition, and all accessories for those firearms. At no point was there a debate about, well, wouldn't it be okay if we let them keep rifles but not cannons? Or what about that puckle gun that's existed already for like 60 years? None of those conversations happened. It's purely about whether or not that even needed to get included, because they figured that it was just going to be an obvious freaking thing. And this is just another infringement in California. Yes, the exposed butthole of the United States, California, framed in flowery rhetoric and Orwellian doublespeak to obfuscate that it is, in fact, an infringement. To declare that the right to keep and bear arms doesn't preclude background checks is Squealer declaring black as white, and O'Brien convincing Winston that 2 + 2 no longer equals 4. It's utter sophistry and absolutely demonstrative of just how tyrannical these people really are. They will declare that anything is okay, even if it's completely infringing on your rights. No, it's not infringing on your rights because you only get the rights that we say so. But here's the thing, folks. If rights can be changed by the government, they're not rights, they're privileges. Your rights don't depend on government. They don't depend on the Constitution. They don't depend on anyone acknowledging that they exist. Your rights exist because they exist. You're a human being, therefore you have rights. This is the exact same argument I bring up to people who are under the impression that the Constitution doesn't apply to non-citizens of the United States. Of course it applies to non-citizens of the United States. It obviously does, because if your rights are inborn in you simply because you're a human being, either you think that people who weren't born in the U.S. are no longer human, which is alarming, or you don't actually believe that, which means that you have no intellectual leg to stand on when the government wants to take those rights away. You gotta pick and choose, man. You gotta pick one or the other. There's no two ways about it. Those are logically opposed ideas. And speaking of why the Second Amendment was written into the Constitution, let's go ahead and hop to the home of the last group who tried to take our guns. Via Reuters, London murder rates overtake New York as knife crime rises. London police investigated more murders than their New York counterparts did over the last 2 months. Statistics show, as the British capital's mayor vowed to fight a violent scourge on the streets. There it is. That is that's 3 months. On the left is New York. On the right is going to be London. And while technically New York still has the lead here over London in overall murders, this past month, March, I mean, not the very past month because those numbers aren't finalized yet, but March numbers actually show that London is now you're more likely to be murdered than New York. So there were 15 murders in London in February against 14 in New York. And for March, 22 murders, that was in February. And in March, there were 22 murders that were investigated in London and only 21 reported in New York. Now, I do also want to point out that from this article, it mentions murders investigated in London, but only murders reported in New York, which could potentially mean that New York PD is not actually investigating all of the murders that come across their desk. But hey, they'll certainly throw you in prison for pot. In the latest bloodshed in London, a 17-year-old girl died on Monday after she was found with gunshot wounds in Tottenham, North London, a day after a man was fatally stabbed in South London. The mayor is deeply concerned by violent crime in the capital. Every loss of life to violent crime is a tragedy. A spokeswoman for the crappy as hell Mayor Sadiq Khan said in a statement on Tuesday. Our city remains one of the safest in the world. But Sadiq wants it to be even safer and is working hard to bring an end to this violent scourge. In January, including January's figures as mentioned previously, New York actually has more murders. The cities do have nearly identical populations, by the way. Gun violence is much less of a problem in Britain, which has strict gun control laws, although still a problem. And most British police are not even equipped with firearms, which is why these terrorists can, walk into nightclubs and things. This is a common thing across a ton of Europe. But British politicians and police are increasingly expressing concern about London's rising murder rate, which is driven by a surge in knife crime. Of the 47 murders in London so far this year, 31 have been committed with knives. What they also don't mention is that at least 2 of those were committed with screwdrivers. Britain's Interior Ministry said it was consulting on new laws to further restrict dangerous weapons, including banning online stores from delivering knives to residential addresses and making an offense to possess certain weapons in public. So, again, their solution is to make people unable to defend themselves from other people yet again. The government is taking action to restrict access to offensive weapons, as well as working to break the deadly cycle of violence and protect our children, families, and communities, a Home Office spokesman said. It's for the children! Khan, who has been in office since May 2016, is from the opposition Labour Party, before him Conservative Boris Johnson, blah, 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 you don't care. Britain's most senior officer, London Police Chief Cressida Dick, said gangs were using online platforms to glamorize violence, adding that disputes between young people could escalate within minutes on social media. The Ben Kinsella Trust, an anti-knife crime charity named after a young victim, said social media amplified a range of other factors that have contributed to the crisis. The charity's CEO, Patrick Green, said there had been extra funding to tackle knife crime, which he welcomed, but added that the government needed to act with more urgency and that budget cuts affecting youth services had played a part. This has been a horrendous year. It's looking like it could be worse than last year, which was worse than the year before, he told Reuters. So it just keeps increasing. It just keeps getting worse, and they keep thinking, well, we'll just ban things harder. We'll just ban more things, and then magically, maybe we'll be able to actually fix this problem. The response so far has been too slow. It feels like we're in a crisis, and we need to respond in that way, he said. Gee, it's almost like banning guns doesn't stop violent crime. I mean, who ever would have guessed? No. Bad people will be bad people. And it doesn't matter if their weapon is a gun or a knife, a car, a 727, a rock. None of that matters. Making good people unable to defend themselves from those people will not make those people harmless. People beat each other to death with their fists. Unless you're about to ban everything, you're never going to protect these people. Plain and simple. It just doesn't work that way. Bad people are always bad. And this doesn't affect anything. And I have to actually point out here that one of my favorite things to come out of this recently is that as of today, where is it? It's around here somewhere. There it is. As of today, this happened. These are blunted knives that police want to distribute to replace their existing kitchen knives in homes of domestic violence victims. Because by giving them blunted knives, they think that they will be saving lives from loss to domestic violence. Now, I'm not going to say that rounded tip knives don't prevent accidental stabbings, but I am going to point out there might be a curved edged flaw to your plan, which makes this ultimately pointless. Because it's blunted. It's blunted knives. It's a blunted. All right. So, from the National Review, moving on. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules that legal gun owners aren't second-class citizens. SCOTUS, take note. See, earlier this week, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court delivered a message that the United States Supreme Court desperately needs to hear. The lawful exercise of your Second Amendment right does not make you a second-class citizen. Here's the context. For the last 2 years, federal courts, including, sadly, the Supreme Court, have endorsed a legal regime where police can use even the lawful exercise of gun rights as a pretext for the violation of other constitutional rights, principally our Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. For example, in 2017, the 11th Circuit held that a police officer enjoyed immunity from suit when he pounded on the door of the wrong apartment late at night, failed to announce himself, and then shot dead a young man when he lawfully answered the door while armed. According to the court, the presence of the gun alone granted the officer the right to shoot with absolute legal impunity. 2 months later, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of police officers who, without a warrant, entered the modest dwelling, a one-room shack, of a man named Angel Mendez, and opened fire when he pointed a BB gun at them. Mendez lost his leg, his girlfriend was also injured, and SCOTUS then used this case as an occasion to reverse a Ninth Circuit use of force rule that would impose liability when police provoke a violent confrontation through an independent Fourth Amendment violation. See, up until that court case, if the cop provoked it, then the cop wasn't immune from prosecution. 2 months later, that was what I was talking about. But perhaps the best expression of gun owners as second-class citizens under the Bill of Rights came from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. The court ruled that police could frisk a person if they believed that the person carried a firearm, even if he possessed a concealed carry permit. According to the court, quote, the danger justifying a protective frisk arises from the combination of a forced police encounter and the presence of a weapon, not from any illegality of the weapon's possessions. In a concurring opinion, a federal circuit court judge actually typed these words, quote, The majority decision today necessarily leads to the conclusion that individuals who elect to carry firearms forego other constitutional rights, like the Fourth Amendment right to have law enforcement officers knock and announce before forcibly entering homes. Likewise, it is difficult to escape the conclusion that individuals who choose to carry firearms necessarily face greater restrictions on their concurrent exercise of their constitutional rights, like those protected by the First Amendment. Now, in plain English, this means gun owners must choose: carry their weapon and lose the full protection of the entire rest of the Bill of Rights, or never pick it up and enjoy your other rights. For people who live in high crime areas, people who are often poor and sometimes non-white, this presents a wholly unacceptable dilemma. The people who have the most urgent need for self-defense find themselves facing the greatest risk of loss of their liberties. Enter the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. In Commonwealth versus Hicks, police responded to a citizen called after Hicks was spotted showing his handgun to another person outside a convenience store. He's not aiming it at anyone. He didn't do anything illegal. He was a concealed carry holder in lawful possession of his weapon. Quote, numerous, end quote, police officers responded to the call, stopped the vehicle, restrained him, and conducted a search. They, quote, smelled alcohol and found a small bag of marijuana. End quote. They then arrested him for driving under the influence and disorderly conduct. Hicks challenged the legality of his arrest, and while the trial court dismissed the disorderly conduct charge, it upheld the legality of the initial search. The court ruled that possession of a concealed weapon in public creates a reasonable suspicion justifying an investigatory stop in order to investigate whether the person is properly licensed. Thus, any concealed carry holder could be subject to search simply because he chose to carry his weapon, to exercise a right guaranteed by both state law in this instance and buttressed by the Bill of Rights, not to mention his natural rights. The state Supreme Court disagreed, holding that it could, quote, find no justification for the notion that a police officer may infer criminal activity merely from an individual's possession of a concealed firearm in public. It continued, unless a police officer who has prior knowledge that a specific individual is not permitted to carry a concealed firearm, prior knowledge, and absent articulable facts supporting reasonable suspicion that a firearm is being used or intended to be used in a criminal manner, there simply is no justification for the conclusion that the mere possession of a firearm, where it lawfully may be carried, is alone suggestive of criminal activity. This is exactly correct, and again, it's buttressed by the plain constitutional truth that there exists a first principle that lies at the heart of the Fourth Amendment, that the government may not target and seize specific individuals without any particular suspicion of wrongdoing and then force them to prove that they are not committing crimes. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court notes that SCOTUS has not addressed the specific legal questions at issue. When the right case arises, it will need to, and when it does, it should note once and for all that gun possession by itself does not compromise the protections of any other constitutional right. Now, from an anarchist perspective, it doesn't matter what the Constitution necessarily says, but what does matter is that this is a fight to try and get to the point where any kind of just carrying your weapon, something you should have a right to do, is no longer going to generate a search and seizure of anything else that you might have. Whether you like it or not, as an anarchist, you do live under these courts and you live under these laws right now, and you can't on your own fight against them. Now, that topic in particular is something else entirely, but if you can get these courts and you can get these regulations on your side, it makes things long-term that much easier. Because the more the buildup of tyranny, the more tyranny is going to build. You can't stop a snowball rolling downhill by ignoring it. So what you're going to need to do is work with these guys and support them for now, the ones fighting it, and wait for when the time comes. Moving on, speaking of the Supreme Court and why you got to worry about it, court rejects challenge to regulation of gun silencers. The Supreme Court rejected a challenge to federal regulation of gun silencers Monday, just days after a gunman allegedly used one in a shooting rampage that killed 12 people in Virginia. The justices did not comment in turning away appeals from 2 Kansas men who were convicted of violating federal law regulating silencers. The men argued that the constitutional right to keep and bear arms should include silencers, which I would completely concur with. Anyone who says different is probably kind of an idiot. The court's action in the silencer cases was among dozens of orders and pending appeals, including decisions to add an international child custody dispute and 4 other cases to next term's docket. The justices also hear cases dealing with a death row inmate in Arizona, racial discrimination claims against Comcast by an African-American-owned media company, environmental cleanup at a Superfund site in Montana, and a dispute between Intel and a retired Intel engineer. The court also rejected an appeal from a Yemeni man who has been held at the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base for more than 17 years without trial. But Justice Stephen Breyer said, quote, it is past time, end quote, for the court to decide whether indefinite detention at the U.S. Navy base in Cuba is legal. Because of course it is, but you guys rejected the case. So, in the silencer cases, Kansas and 7 other states joined in a court filing urging justices to hear the appeals. The states said the court should affirm that the Second Amendment protects, quote, silencers and other firearm accessories. The other states are Arkansas, Idaho, Louisiana, Montana, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah. I want to circle back to that real quick because, again, we're talking about the Supreme Court rejecting a case. And the Supreme Court said, we don't want to hear this, as Kansas, Arkansas, Idaho, Louisiana, Montana, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah were urging them to not only hear it, but rule on the side of the people suing, saying that it was unconstitutional. These are states saying this. And they still didn't want to hear it, but you want to sit there and you want to tell me that it's somehow a conservative Supreme Court. Mike Keister. All right, no, that ain't a thing, man. That ain't a thing. And I mean, I also want to point out, silencers aren't some big, mysterious, scary thing. They were patented in 1908. The Maxim Silent Arms Company, that's HP Maxim, not the original Hiram Maxim. It's the original Hiram Maxim, the guy who invented the machine guns, son. He advertised them and was selling them in catalogs and things. They've been around for a very, very, very long time. And fun fact, he's also the same guy who invented mufflers, and he actually invented the gun silencer first. That's actually what inspired the car muffler. So, fun fact, that's something you know now. But President Donald Trump, where am I at? Oh, there we go. President Donald Trump's administration asked the court to stay out of the case and leave the convictions in place. Shane Cox, owner of a military surplus store, was convicted of making and transferring an unregistered silencer to customer Jeremy Kettler, was convicted of possessing one, all in violation of the 85-year-old National Firearms Act. Both men were sentenced to probation. Meanwhile, police are trying to determine a motive for the deadly shootings in Virginia Beach, which are kind of irrelevant. I mean, who really cares at this point? They claim he was armed with 2 semi-automatic handguns, and a suppressor and what they call extended ammunition magazines, although exactly what that means they've never been particularly clear of, because they're usually like 18 round mags, which are standard for like 9mm. So of course Craddock was killed in a shootout with the police. But I do have to point out again, the FUDs and the chickens at the NRA are still arguing that no one needs a silencer. As states are saying, well, silencers are constitutionally protected. Most major gun rights organizations outside of the NRA are saying silencers are constitutionally protected. The NRA is being as non-committal as they possibly can, and Trump is talking about banning them. So now that the Supreme Court has refused to hear this, what this means is that we're definitely on track for suppressors to be made illegal. And if the bump stocks are anything to go by, they're going to be made illegal by fiat. So just the stroke of a pen, they're going to be made illegal, and they're going to be confiscated, just like with the bump stocks. So unlike every other president who has ever done any anti-gun legislation ever, Trump at that point will have enacted two first time ever, two anti-gun legislation acts that require confiscation. Trump is the only one. Even Obama actually loosened a lot of gun restrictions. Reagan increased gun restrictions. Clinton increased gun restrictions. Obama, who the NRA and all of the FUDs freaked out about, actually loosened them. And now Trump is making them even worse. But he's the hero? He's so different than everyone else? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, people. But now, it is the moment that everyone always waits for. It is time. Florida man. A Florida man who allegedly stole a car, killed a dog, and also possibly some chickens, and chased a man with an axe, was found naked in a chicken coop Tuesday, police said. John Menn, 25, of Sarasota, Florida, was arrested Tuesday after New York State Police responded to a call about an Audi parked facing the wrong direction on Interstate 81, roughly 3 miles from the Pennsylvania border. Dude is a long way from home. Investigators discovered the vehicle was reported stolen all the way back down in Sarasota. Men, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Mehne. Take from that what you will. Had allegedly been driving the Audi when he crashed into a guardrail. He then tried to hop on the back of a van, failed, then jumped on to the back of a pickup truck. That driver pulled over, allowing him to flee into the woods. Okay, keeping up with me so far here? I hope so. A search by the state police and the Broome County Sheriff's Office ensued, and later that day, state police received a call from a man who, quote, came home from work and found Mehne in his chicken coop, end quote. Mehne, when asked what the hell he was doing, allegedly said he was, quote, killing the chickens. I wonder if he said he was choking the chickens, huh? State police said then he chased the man with his axe, rode off after stealing an ATV, and then abandoned the ATV. Soon after, authorities said they received another call about a naked man in another chicken coop who could not possibly in any way be the same guy. Who would ever look for him in a chicken coop again, naked? They then arrested him. A 25-year-old was bitten by a police canine officer in the process. Probably knew the chickens. Dog was pissed. Authorities later learned that he had allegedly broken into a home in the area as well and killed a family dog for no reason. He was transported to a hospital for treatment, booked and remanded to the Broome County Jail on no bail because you might have gotten away with chasing people with an axe, being naked in a chicken coop, and even killing the chickens and crashing a car, man, but you killed a dog. And that they will not stand for. And that has been, as usual, our Florida Man of the Week. Really appreciate you guys sticking with me and hanging out. Listen to everything that I had to say. It's definitely been an interesting one, and unfortunately I have been wildly busy trying to get a lot of this stuff done and everything else. But I do, again, definitely want to thank everybody for listening. And please do not forget to check out my sponsor, libertytees.com, which is where I got this awesome John 556 shirt, along with a whole bunch of other ones that you will see me wearing on this show, as well as our other show that you should also check out. This Sunday is going to be, again, another awesome episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable Discussion, featuring me and a bunch of other cool people who talk anarchy and all sorts of other cool shit, and mostly laugh about how ridiculous Clown World has become. But if you guys want, I'm going to throw the link in the comments to Liberty Tees so you can check them out. Be sure to let him know that I sent you that way. And as always, stay safe, stay real, laugh to heal. You guys have a good day. Unsolicited dick pic.